This is a brief genealogy and biography of Dale Eugene Peotter, my father. Most of the genealogy and history in this movie was made available by the extensive research efforts of Ralph Everett Peotter, Dale's older brother. Additional stories were provided by other family members. Let's begin the story of my father way back, about 150 years ago. Before the Franco-Prussian War of 1871, there used to be a European country named Prussia. Tracing back Dale's father's side of the family, before the name Peotter, P-E-O-T-T-E-R, our last name was Piotrowski, meaning family of Peter. Going back even further, before the name Piotrowski, it is very possible that our name was Peter. After the Franco-Prussian War, Prussia became a state within the country of Germany. Around the same time, the spelling Piotrowski was changed to Peter, but it's spelled P-I-O-T-T-E-R, which is more German. In 1870 Prussia, Carle Piotrowski had a son. His name was Carl Friedrich Piotrowski Jr. At this time, the family name Piotrowski was changed to Peter, P-I-O-T-T-E-R. In 1890, Carl Piotrowski Sr., now spelled P-I-O-T-T-E-R, Peter, immigrated to the United States. We believe that 4 of his children came with him, including his 20-year-old son, Carl Friedrich Peter Jr. We don't know where or when Carl Sr. died, but Carl Jr. must have landed in Michigan rather quickly because in 1891, Carl Friedrich Peter Jr. became a U.S. citizen of Lenawee County, Michigan. And at that time, he changed his first name to Charles. It seems to me that there was a motivation to adapt to whatever country they lived in, as evidenced by changing their names. In Prussia, they were Piotrowski. In Germany, they were Peter, P-I-O-T-T-E-R. Now, in the United States, Carl becomes Charles. Charles married Mary Heinz in Lenawee County, Michigan, and they had 10 children. Early in their marriage, the spelling of Peter, P-I-O-T-T-E-R, was changed one more time to Peotter, P-E-O-T-T-E-R, as it remains today. In 1898, the 4th child of Charles and Mary is born, Ralph W. Peotter, who will become Dale's father. The baptism certificate for Ralph W. Peotter is a story within a story. The infant baptism was performed in Michigan, but the certificate was written in German, even though, according to other family members, they only spoke English in the home. Ralph's name on the document reads Rudolf Wilhelm Johann Peter. Coincidentally, my name contains the same 2 middle names with English spellings, William John. In 1919, Ralph W. Peotter marries Lodisa Brunfield Allison in Tecumseh. That's a city within Lenawee County, Michigan. Ralph and Lodisa will have 6 children, one of whom will be Dale. But before we get to that, let's trace back Dale's mother's side of the family. The family line of Lodisa Allison had already been in the New World, as it was called, a very long time before Ralph and Lodisa ever met. The Allison family name goes back 6 generations to the first white man settlers in Orange County, New York. Presumably, the Allisons were originally from England. In 1721, members of the Allison family landed on Southold, Long Island, a port of entry for the British colonies. In 1726, they were building homes and farming the land in Orange County, New York, a colony of England. The Allisons landed in 1721. That's 55 years before the Declaration of Independence, and 169 years before Carl Peter Sr. would arrive in the United States. 4 generations of Allisons lived and died in Orange County, New York. Then, Amasa James Allison moves to Lenawee County, Michigan. In 1875, Amasa has a son, Arthur Herbert Allison. In 1898, Arthur marries Alice May Onstead. And 3 years later, Lodisa, Dale's mother, is born. Ralph W. Peotter and Lodisa B. Allison had a total of 6 children, all in Lenawee County, Michigan. Dale Eugene Peotter was their 4th child, born December 30th, 1929. He was born into the Great Depression, which taught him to always be frugal, practical, and to save something for a rainy day. His father, Ralph, worked at the local foundry until 1931 when it closed. Unable to pay the mortgage, Ralph and Lodisa lost their farm. With 5 children at home, Ralph delivered blocks of ice for families' ice boxes and begged for work on local farms to feed his family until the foundry reopened in 1934. Their 6th and last child was born in 1935. With improved wages during the World War II years, Ralph and Lodisa bought a home in 1945. At this time, 2 of their 6 children had already married and moved on. Due to lung problems, Ralph quit the foundry and took a job at the Hayden Mill in Tecumseh until he retired. Ralph moved his family to a Tecumseh home with 1 acre of land and lived there until his death in 1975. Lodisa passed away in 1984. Ralph and Lodisa spent their entire married lives in Tecumseh, Michigan. Tecumseh is a small town of about 6 square miles with a population of 8,400 people today. That's roughly 1,400 people per square mile. Tecumseh boasted a big industry, Tecumseh Products, from the 1950s through the 1980s. Tecumseh Products manufactured about 70% of the nation's small refrigeration units that are used in your typical kitchen refrigerators and window-mounted air conditioners. Tecumseh Products also made about 50% of the air conditioning units for the US-made cars, and they made small gasoline-powered engines for lawnmowers, chainsaws, leaf blowers, etc. In 1950, Dale leaves home just before his 21st birthday. In order to get himself a college education without a loan, Dale joins the U.S. Air Force. He served 4 years in the Air Force and used his GI benefits for the rest of his life. Dale was a communications operator in a bomber squad during the Korean conflict. They were stationed near Korea. I remember a story that he told me. His squad only did practice operations, never dropping real bombs. He told me that they wanted the men to be trained on more than one task inside the airplane so that there would be a second person to take over in case one of them got shot during flight. My father's second duty was the bomber chair. He told me that the training had him look through a 3-inch square viewfinder, and the mission counted on that person seeing the target in the viewfinder and then to yell out, "Target confirmed," at which point the bomb would be released. He said it felt like an awful lot of responsibility riding on a 3-inch viewfinder. When Dale returned home from his military service, he attended the Tri-State College from 1955 to 1958. Dale received a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Mathematics and history were his favorite subjects. Dale memorized the relationships of sine, cosine, and tangent, as well as their inverses. He used a slide ruler to approximate answers that he couldn't do in his head, and then he confirmed his answers with paper and pencil. This is how things were done before computers. Dale met Francis Rose Boswell on Evans Lake near Adrian, Michigan. They were both there to enjoy the water skiing. In 1957, Dale and Francis get married in Adrian, Michigan. The reception was held at Francis's parents' cottage at a nearby lake. Upon Dale's graduation in 1958, Dale was offered a position with McDonnell Douglas in Long Beach, California. Dale and Frances immediately moved to Santa Monica, California. In 1960, I was born. The family then moves to the San Fernando Valley. My sister, Myrna Jo, was born in 1962. She prefers to be called Jo. Dale, Fran, Mark, and Myrna Jo lived in a house in Northridge, California for several years. Dale built the 6-foot wall around the property of that house. He had a swimming pool installed in the backyard. My sister and I spent many summers in that pool. Dale planted all the landscaping trees and shrubs himself. He installed the sprinkler system by himself. My father had piles of gravel and sand delivered to our driveway, along with many bags of concrete. Then he made his own concrete mixture in a wheelbarrow, and he poured these 3-foot by 3-foot square slabs of concrete in the backyard. I remember my mom asking him to stop before there would be no grass left in the backyard. He also poured large slabs of wide steps that extend from the public sidewalk to the front door. Dale and the family enjoyed camping with a little bit of style. We had a pop-up trailer tent. We had a camping stove and lanterns. We drove up to Lake Tahoe a few times for a week of outdoor vacations. We also made long family trips in the station wagon without seatbelts, driving from Los Angeles, California to Tecumseh, Michigan. Dale introduced my sister and me to his parents, his siblings, and our cousins. For several years, our garage was Dale's workshop. He made handsome wine racks, hoping to sell them at a profit. To his disappointment, buyers did not appreciate his workmanship enough to pay a little extra for good quality wine racks. They preferred to buy something cheaply made and cheaply priced. I found this photo of a wine rack on Etsy.com. It looks similar to what my father made in our garage. He made hundreds of them. Dale invented board games to play for all ages. One of his games he called Pentapoker, used an ordinary deck of cards and a 5x5 grid to place your cards on, forming a poker hand for all players to see as the cards are dealt one at a time. This is a photo that reminds me of his card game. Dale made wonderful kites to fly. One year, my father and I won a Los Angeles citywide contest for the highest flying box kite. There must have been over 1,000 participants. Our box kite was up 1,500 feet when we ran out of twine. I could barely see it up there. We were wondering how much higher we would go before we interfere with airplane traffic. This photo reminds me of that box kite. Ours was also made of paper, but Dale made it with many layers of a fine tissue paper, which he strengthened with smelly shellac and then spray painted beautiful colors on it. He must have worked on that kite for months, but we took first place. Dale and Fran divorced in 1974 or 1975. At nearly the same time as the divorce, McDonnell Douglas, along with many other companies in the space industry, made large cutbacks. A nationwide layoff ensued. Dale, along with hundreds of engineers across the country, were suddenly unemployed. From my personal perspective, this was probably the worst time in Dale's life. His idyllic dream of raising a family of 4 with the comforts of an upper middle class income were brought to an abrupt halt. For the next year or two, Dale struggled to get on with his life. He reinvented himself as a single man, servicing air conditioners for an HVAC company. He even designed HVAC systems for both commercial and residential applications. In 1975, Dale found a second woman to share life with, Ruby Manley. At this time, Ruby had 2 children who were in their early teens, Carle and Jane. Dale and Ruby lived together but never married. Dale welcomed Carle and Jane into his life as his own children, as a new family. Here are some words from Carle Manley, who had the pleasure of being close to Dale for about 50 years. He was simple by choice, not a high-maintenance bone in his body. He was a gentle soul. Never did he get angry. He was also very intelligent, the type of person who would sit and solve mathematical equations for fun. He also liked to read the dictionary daily. When I was younger, he used to hit me with a new word or two in a sentence that related to something we would be doing. He met my mom, Ruby, in a disco dance club. I have seen him dance several times, and it is one of those things you can never unsee. Not a good dancer, to say the least. He was good to my mom, me, and my sister. We made a few trips to the beach with Mark and Myrna Joe. I started working for him as a helper in my teens. He ran service calls for an HVAC company. It was long and hard work. The heat would make me sick. Dale would never stop for us to drink water. At the end of the day, he would pay me $20 for my 8 hours. Big money for me then. I would later use those $20 bills to buy my first motorcycle. Dale and myself enjoyed riding street bikes. He bought a Honda 350 and would take my mom for rides. They would go to the Big Oaks Lodge. I'm sure Dale would be showing off his dance moves to the music of Saturday Night Fever. On some occasions, he would take me for a ride up the canyons. We had fun. When it came to construction, Dale was a bit of a perfectionist. It had to be right. We remodeled our first house in 1982. He taught me so much about construction, framing, electrical, and plumbing. I would later expand on that knowledge base, and it took me to where I am now, a maintenance and operations director for a school district. Dale was truly a farm boy at heart. He loved gardening. He loved mowing the grass in his riding mower. Most of all, he loved to dig. We used to call him the world's largest gopher. He would dig and then fill it back in. My mom said it was good exercise for him. For many years, he kept a vegetable garden in the backyard. He would often eat directly from the garden. He wouldn't let anything from the garden go to waste. Once he tried to grow watermelons. He used thousands of gallons of water, and the largest one was the size of a softball. I could see the frustration, so I grabbed a large watermelon from the store and folded under the leaves of the other melons. He screamed with happiness when he saw it. When he realized it was just a store-bought melon, he laughed and laughed. He was so proud of his children and his grandchildren. There are so many stories to share over the past 50 years with Dale. Dale and Carle lived near each other in Santa Clarita, California, for a few years. Then Dale moved to Simi Valley, where he lived with Ruby. Dale stayed in that Simi home for the last 40 years of his life. Ruby Manley passed away on September 30th, 1996. The following remarks are from Dale's granddaughter, Aubrey. I remember one year when Grandpa Dale came to visit us in his big RV. We were kids in Arizona. He parked the RV in our driveway, and he stayed there for months. It was a lot of fun to have him there. He had wooden puzzles that were hard to solve. He taught me how to draw that shape of an envelope with the big X in the middle without lifting your pencil. That was really cool. One time I stayed home from school because I was sick. Grandpa Dale made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but he also put butter on it. It was the first time I ever tasted that, and it was really good. I remember going to his house in Simi Valley, California. There was a big walnut tree with a swing on it. The swing was just a big pillow at the end of a long rope. While I was swinging, the rope broke. He fixed it and improved it using a 4x4 piece of plywood, more sturdy for sure. He also had an above-ground pool. It was a lot of fun. The next remarks are from Dale's grandson, Clifton. I was about 8 years old. The backyard had 2 RV trailers. One of them was locked. I wanted to go inside, but I was told there were deadly spiders inside. I never got the chance to solve the mystery of the deadly spiders. Grandpa Dale made a marble tilt maze game. You have to maneuver a marble to roll through the maze walls by tilting the game with 2 large handles. It was a requirement to play that game every time I visited him. I remember going to his house in Simi for Christmas time. I remember the hanging out, the dinner, the presents. Carle's children were there also. The following remarks are from Kinsey Peotter, one of Dale's grandchildren. One of my favorite memories of Grandpa Dale is when he came and spent the holidays with us when we were kids. I liked getting to go inside his RV parked in the driveway because it felt like a fort. I remember playing a game of Go Fish with him, and we got to the end of the game. The deck to pull from was empty. I only had one card left in my hand, and Grandpa had a bunch. So I asked him if he had the card I needed, and he said no, which was impossible because there were no other options left. I said as much to him, and he said, "Well, you never told me I had to tell the truth in this game. Where's the challenge in that? Then anybody would be able to win." I was so frustrated that he hadn't been playing fair, but he just started cracking up laughing, and I eventually gave in and laughed too. Grandpa Dale and my dad started talking to me about gravity and the Earth's rotation. They rigged a long string with a spoon at the bottom and attached it to a ceiling fan. And they said that over time, the spoon would start to spin in a circle without being touched because of the force of gravity on it and the Earth's rotation underneath it. We stared at it for what felt like hours, but I'm sure it was a few minutes. Nothing happened. So Grandpa said, "Well, it'll take some time. Just don't touch it." I checked back every few minutes just to see because I couldn't believe this would really spin. Eventually, it started to make very tiny, slow circles. I thought Grandpa Dale and my dad must be magic. I didn't have a chance to know Grandpa Dale in my adult years, but I think he would have been proud of me and he would have liked me. I always liked him. I was always so impressed by how much he seemed to know about everything. His house felt lived in, and I can't remember a time that I didn't see a smile on his face underneath all that facial hair. And now I would like to end this story with the best memory I have of my childhood. In my opinion, this was also the highlight of my father's career. In 1967, McDonnell Douglas, Long Beach, California, had a contract to build a big part of the Saturn V launch vehicle. This launch vehicle was a huge rocket, and it would become the only type of rocket that was built several times for several missions to get US astronauts on the moon. Dad once mentioned to me that his contribution to the team dealt with the radio communication. He helped make the system that would tell the people on Earth what is going on with the rocket, even if they were not able to communicate directly with the astronauts. I remember watching the live coverage of the Apollo 11 launch on TV. It was July 16th, 1969. The whole world was watching. We waited for hours to see the vertical liftoff that would propel the spacecraft into orbit. For the Apollo 11 mission, the launch rocket was divided into 3 parts called stages. Each of these stages contains a lot of fuel, and it breaks away from the rocket after its fuel is spent, falling into the ocean. Dale's team from Long Beach, California was responsible for stage 2. I remember the moment when the announcer declared that stage 2 had safely separated because my dad yelled out, "That's it! We did it! If anything goes wrong now, it's not our fault." For the next 4 days, we watched the news coverage intently. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to step onto the surface of the moon, while Michael Collins orbited the moon in the vehicle that would return them all safely back to Earth. As Neil Armstrong touched his boots on the moon, he said, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." In 1973, before leaving McDonnell Douglas, Dale also worked on the Skylab project. Dale passed away in Simi Valley, California at the age of 92. This video was made in loving memory of my father, Dale Eugene Peotter.
I guess Santa doesn't do the wrapping, the elves do.
My eyesight isn't too good.
Okay, that's all right.
From Carle. And Joyce.
Yep.